Go. Oh, that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Driveline Baseball and Driveline Academy are proud to present to you the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous podcast. And if you're not down with that, I've got two words for you. Good luck. I'm sorry. I don't know. Or good morning, good afternoon, good evening. All of those two words are also work fine for us. Again, my name is Deven Morgan, Director of Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. Thank you for joining us on the Driveline Academy podcast. We're back. ABCA, PG, Perfect Game Showcase. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. The landscape of college recruiting, maybe we'll touch on that today as well. But first, long-time listeners, last-time listeners, and intermittent listeners also know that the first thing we start this show with is just a little bit of promo. We're going to start with our good friends at AxeBat. So AxeBat.com, code DL20, as in Dallas Larry 20 will get you 20% off with tools and training stuff and all sorts of other fun baseball, stick, and ball sport enthusiast accessories that you need at AxeBat.com. So go talk to Dan and the homeboys over there. AxeBat.com, code DL20, Dallas Larry 20. Big shout out to the guys over at Axe and also the guys over at HitTrax. I just got back from ABCA, the American Baseball Coaches Association, over there in beautiful, balmy Columbus, Ohio, surrounded by 6,999 other fanatical youth baseball coaches and high school baseball coaches and college coaches and pro coaches and vendors. And one of the things I got a chance to do at ABCA was do a little bit of like a live hitting demo with the boys and Axe in the HitTrax cage at ABCA. They got me four random kids, an 8-year-old, a 13-year-old, two 18s, and I guess another kid that was actually not a kid, who's actually a pro ball guy. And I got a chance to just like teach hitting for a half hour. And man, if that wasn't just the most sheer fun that I had at ABCA, I don't know what was. And like, maybe I don't talk about this enough, but I really love coaching youth baseball. Like, I really, really love coaching. It's so much fun to be able to not only just coach generally, but also to bring kids who might be a little bit green into this experience and this environment of what it looks like when you're training in a HitTrax cage. So you've got constant feedback about the batted ball production, ball flight, whichever term you might choose to be more triggered with. Go ahead and run with that one. And then combining it with the tools that we had at Axe. So I had these 4 or 5 kids, brought them in for just like some simple tee stuff, just to get a little bit loose, encourage them to hit a little bit of a dynamic warm-up before we started hitting, and then just got some swings off and then did some really simple drill work and combine that with some of the tools we had at Axe, right? So the first thing we started working on was this little youth underload smash bat for the younger kids and the skinny barrel with the older ones, and combining that with just like a little step back drill. From there, started to introduce some of the speed trainers and did that in a little bit of the big poppy drill. So we're getting hands to knees, come back up, big separation, and then, get the swing off. And then just worked into some of the Axe game bats, and then just like, hey, let's use everything we can in this environment, but also some of the external stuff we had on the floor, right? Like I'm pointing out, an exit sign or like a vendor sign, and I'm talking to kids constantly in that environment about what's our intention, what did we produce, and how are we going to shift our external target in order to try to get a closer to the, the panacea of whatever we're looking for in hitting. And it was so much fun. I'm so appreciative to HitTrax Andrew, Mike T. Francesca over at HitTrax, and the whole crew there, Tom, and then certainly all the boys over at AxeBat and Dane and his crew. Man, it was a lot of fun, and specifically a lot of fun because at ABCA, I'm typically running from like meeting to meeting to meeting because I am too stupid and I am on these committees and trying to push the game forward in some of the ways that we've talked about on this podcast. So being able to just like have a half hour of my ABCA involved just coaching and having fun, that was awesome. Fortunately, the folks over there at AxeBat had Strategy Red available to record it. So hopefully some of that content will be coming out to you guys soon. And man, all I can hope for is just that some of the good vibes that we had going on in the cage, and also some of the way that, I mean, again, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal and say that I'm the best youth baseball coach in the world, because I'm definitely not that. But I do think that if you get a chance to watch the footage and check it out, you're going to get some insight into how at least I, and more broadly, Driveline thinks about how do you manipulate those two things, like implement environment and the drill in order to drive hitting performance improvement. That was awesome. But before we get too deep into ABCA, there's some other stuff we got to talk about. And, well, let's just get right into the nitty-gritty of it. Drum roll. My son went to a perfect game tournament at the end of December. Now, for some people, maybe that gets your hackles up. For some people, maybe you're just curious. And the reason that would be the response is because of things that I think are out in the ecosystem and perhaps things that I've said. And one of those things might be, how do you end up in a position where you are able to go full 100% bullets, specifically on the throwing side, at the end of December? So what I thought would be valuable is for me to kind of walk through like what that actually looks like, because on the surface, knowing that like for most people, high school baseball and youth baseball seasons are going to start at the tail end of February or perhaps the beginning of March, or at least that's what we have for us in the local Pacific Northwest market. I'm aware that in other areas of the country, you guys have a little bit of a different schedule. But for us, that's kind of our timeline, right? As we're trying to get going for games, end of February, beginning of March, high school baseball around here ends up this really consecrated period of time where either the last day of February or the first day of March is generally your first day of tryouts. And high school baseball coaches are kind of shoved in this configuration, and I've talked about this before, but for new listeners, I'll go ahead and reiterate, where at least where we are, you get like 2 to 3 days to try to like make your cuts and carve down to what you're going to have in terms of like probably ideally a varsity and a JV roster. And then you got to like make a team, right, and everything that entails, and figure out who's going to play where, what your rotations will look like in 6 days before you have like your first jamboree style games, and then immediately leading into more real competition, and it's a really compressed schedule. So with that said, I think it makes sense to be curious or perhaps skeptical about why and how you get ready to throw 100% bullets at the end of December, because we're literally 2.5, almost 3 months from the beginning of that high school season. So I figured, let's talk about it. And certainly let's also talk about that fact that it's my son's first perfect game showcase ever. And some of the stuff that entailed and what that portends for, college baseball recruiting. And I'll be honest about like why we decided to go do that thing as well. So we in our Driveline Academy team played in a PG tournament last summer. And in that tournament, my son, Danny, threw a ball above 87 miles an hour. I don't know if 87 or 88 was the peak, but like he threw a decently firm bullet for a 15-year-old. And when that happens, I suspect what's going on in the back end with Perfect Game is, number one, they get profiles created for all these kids that participate in these events. And then because they have Diamond Cast, because they have Stalker radar guns going and or TrackMan, and they have staff, some of that data starts to flow into the profile. And my kid's profile got a little like award that said, threw a ball 87 miles an hour or whatever in a PG event. And I suspect that what happened is that because he threw the ball that hard in that event, it triggered something on their end to go like, hey, we're going to send you an invite for X amount of showcases, right? And certainly, because we signed up for that PG event, once we did that period, we started to get a lot of emails from PG. Which is fine, right? Like they're running a business and they're doing a really great job of using that type of like referral engine to keep kids in their ecosystem. And eventually, once we get to the tail end of the story, I do want to get into the heart of like I think the need that PG serves, because it's really easy to demonize them and make them a bad guy. But I think it's a little bit different, at least in my experience, finally having participated in one of their events, a showcase event from the ground up, in that they're just serving a need, but we'll get to that. So we get this invite for the PG main event showcase. It's down in Fort Myers, Florida, and they're going to be handling it down at JetBlue Park. And like that in and of itself, sounds a little bit special to like be able to be down there and be in a minor league field. Certainly, Fort Myers is one of those places where if you know where to look, there's a crap ton of baseball. But because we get so many different events, invitations from PG, I will confess that I did have the luxury of texting the vice president of Perfect Game, Taylor McCullough, who I'm on committees with at the ABCA, and just said, hey, respectfully, is this one that we should actually pay attention to, right? Relative to, the more broad goal, which is my son is 16. He will be turning 17 in a terrifyingly few amount of days. And we're going into the junior season of not only high school baseball, but his junior summer. And we're trying to figure out what college baseball is going to look like. And right now, we've got nothing. And I'll be honest about that, right? Like right now, we don't have any type of, abundance of colleges or college coaches who have reached out about, hey, would you be interested in checking out our program? That doesn't mean we don't have anything at all. He's had some interest from some guys that I've talked to or people that have talked to him, notably, and you're going to, large caveat about this episode. I'm going to brag on my kid a lot. And I don't know. I don't feel like I do that much of that on here. But I also feel like, we're at a point where the journey is starting to be a little bit more real. And in so much as it matters, I think it's probably a good thing for me to be honest about everything that's kind of going on with this journey as both, wearing my Driveline hat as the director of youth baseball and everything that entails, but also as a dad, right? Like, I want you to kind of understand the story from both sides. I'm going to try to connect those dots. So I will, in this one, I'm going to brag fairly relentlessly about my kid. And if that makes you feel any type of way, then, hey, man, catch us on the next pod. But this one, I'm going to talk about my kid a little bit. So I text Taylor McCullough, hey, is this one we should really check out? And he goes, honestly, it's something to consider. They have a lot of kids that get committed out of that event. They apply a lot of promotion to it, which then kind of works its way down into the social media ecosystem and other platforms, certainly PG's being one of them, to ideally attract the attention of college coaches. And, and I will also say that like PG puts out some stuff about that event specifically, talking about the number of kids who come out of it getting committed. And ultimately, that's the thing that we are trying to solve right now is where, is there interest? I mean, presumably, hopefully there is an interest somewhere for a college coach to want, my son to be able to play on a roster and play college baseball. But then from there, what's the right configuration? And I'll get into that in a bit. So Taylor says, hey, you should come check it out. So we talk about it as a family and go, you know what, like, let's go ahead and do it. I mean, this is going to be this will be his first showcase ever. And I think that's another thing that kind of bears mentioning, which is for as long as he's been playing baseball, this is the first time I have ever had him in a showcase event, period. Now he has done, the Pac Northwest games that Rhett Parker and the boys over at Top Tier put on for the last couple of years, and that's been great. But it's not. I guess I wouldn't say that Pac Northwest is as much of a showcase as it is like an advanced player competitive event. If you're picking up what I'm putting down. So we decided to go do it, and the plan is that we are going to get on a plane on December 27th. So we get there the day before. The event starts on Sunday the 28th, and we will do all those things and then fly out on the 28th, the 29th, and 30th. Fly out the evening of the 30th, and we get back a little bit after midnight on the 31st. So, fun fact. I get sick on Christmas Day Eve, so that by the time that the 27th rolls around, that Saturday, I feel like poop that has been left out in the sun far too long. I got nothing. But we've signed up for it. So my immediate concern is like, well, I have to make sure that my son doesn't stay sick. And we're going to be in an airplane sitting next to each other for X amount of hours. And, we're going to be in a hotel room together. And I'm terrified that like we are going to spend all this money. And it's, the money part is not insubstantial. We're going to spend all this money, and then we're going to get down there and he's going to get sick, and then like it's not going to go well. So I'm trying to do everything I can to keep him healthy. Our flights get a little bit delayed on Saturday, both the first leg and the second leg, so that my plan, which was we would get to JetBlue that Saturday and catch their early registration so we didn't have to show up as early on Sunday morning. That all fell by the wayside for reasons entirely outside of my control. So instead, we get there on Saturday night. We aren't able to do the early registration thing, so we just head out to B-Dubs, watch some football, get some chicken wings and the kid, and then try to get to sleep as soon as possible. And we'll go like fairly detailed on this, and you guys tell me if this is more detail that you want, but maybe this will help somebody. Because we miss early registration, we have to wake up at 6 to get to the field for a 6:45 check-in, addressed by the staff at 7:30, and then the workouts start promptly at 8 o'clock in the morning. So a 6 a.m. wake up East Coast time effectively means a 3 a.m. wake up West Coast time. And that's what we're looking at. Effectively, my kid has to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and then coach try to perform his best in a baseball specific skill and athletic output, which is not the best configuration, but like, hey, it takes what it takes. So let's figure it out. So we, bring an armload worth of two things, melatonin and ZMAs, zinc, magnesium, and amino acids. And the idea is that we're going to try to keep him from sleeping on the plane so that by the time that we get, settled in Fort Myers, we get dinner and get back to the hotel room, I can get him to bed as early as possible and then increase his ability to get sleep with the melatonin and increase the depth of his sleep with the ZMAs so that when we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning East Coast time, 3 a.m. our time, he at least feels like he's decently refreshed. And I will say, it's amusing as a parent, I suppose, that like all too often trying to wake kids up for school feels like you are, it's like it feels like you are, trying to do an incredibly difficult task. But amusingly, a 3 a.m. wake up for the kid when we get a chance to go do baseball stuff right after we wake up, like that's a little bit easier. Like he's able to just wake up and flip the switch. But I get it, right? I understand what I'm working with. So we do get our 6 a.m. wake up, just try to get a little bit of food in him, get cleaned up, and get down to the field in JetBlue, get registered, go through all that stuff. We get through the registration. He picks up his team jersey and stuff for the week. Takes the picture, the mugshot picture that PG uses, and then we're just right off to the races. And starts with the catching stuff. Starts the throwdowns. So the kids get plenty of time to kind of go through and do their dynamic and get their catch plan, get some walk toss in, and basically do whatever they need to do in order to, be in a good, healthy place to go do their throwdowns. And I suppose, gosh, I guess I can be that guy. I said I was going to brag, so if I'm going to brag, I might as well pull up the statistics and we'll just tell the entire story. So kid does pretty okay on the throwdowns from the catching position, a 1.97 pop at 79 miles an hour. So the velo is 95th percentile across all 27 grads per PG. And the pop time is 82.95 percentile. So pretty good on both. The interesting thing, and I think this is just one of those things you kind of take with a little bit of grain of salt, is we were the first group to go through catching stuff for the day, and Danny was right in that first group. And I think we've probably gone in depth about radar guns and stuff like this on the show before, but just to recap, when you're thinking about a radar gun, even like a stalker or a pocket radar, the cone of that radar gun, basically the way that you want the cone of the cone of that radar gun, basically for what it sees, to be as directionally right at where the object is coming or going from as possible to get the best radar reading. And if you don't get that, you end up in getting some weird, funky data due to cosine error. Side note, if you really want to go deep on this topic, former Driveline Academy and Driveline employee Zach Moraine wrote a blog that's called something about, it's like radar gun reliability. It's a 2 or 3 part blog that Zach wrote. And it's still, I mean, honestly, one of the definitive resources that I send out to people if they have questions about radar guns at the youth level, and kind of breaks down how reliable they are from like the old school, like the Bushnell, the cheapo ones, to a pocket radar all the way up to a stalker. And then also talks about some of this application stuff about trying to manage cosine error and make sure that you get the most accurate readings as possible. So they're doing their throwdowns, and the guy on staff who's recording is maybe like, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe even 15 degrees offline from the direction of the path of the ball from home plate to second base. And in that group, what I thought I heard, and I wouldn't carve this in stone or anything or hold me entirely accountable, but what I thought I heard was a lot of like those throws capped at 79, and it didn't seem like anybody got over 80 in that first group. And I suspect part of the reason for that could be that like the radar gun was a little bit offline in the path. And it's it's amusing. Like I'm trying to like narrate this experience for my wife who is at home with our daughter, because I just went solo with Dee. She's home with our daughter who's home from college, and she's getting on me like, well, you have to go talk to somebody. And certainly the right intention, and I mean my girl is the mama bear of all the mama bears. Like, she's going to want to stand up and do her thing. But the tricky thing is in that environment is like, number one, what's done is done. Toothpaste is out of the tube. And it's also one of those things where I guess broadly, I don't want to be that attached to like a 0.5 or a 0.8 or a 1.2, whatever, whatever the distance in the difference would be between like a perfectly executed radar gun capture and, what he might have had in his group. Like, it's okay. It's really okay. It's not to say that like you don't want to see some accuracy there. And I think the guy who was running the gun for that actually got corrected and got a little bit more in line in the group after us. But it's just one of those things that happens. It happens. We live in an imperfect world, and it's fine. So we get through the throwdowns, and that's done. Then we go to another field, a football field. We're going to do this 60 times. And at this point, we had the start of the workouts for the throwdown started at 8. We go over to the field to run the 60, and it's like a 10 o'clock start time. And so now that means 7 o'clock our time. And I know that Dee's going to be hungry. So I'm trying to push him like, hey, like, do you want to get some fuel? Do you want to get some fuel? Do you want to get some food in you, some more food? He's like, no, I want to be light for the sprinting. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, all right, I'm going to let you make your own choice here, because you're 16, you're almost 17 years old, and this is your thing. It's not mine. I'm trying to help and facilitate as much as possible, but it's your thing. So he goes into the sprint thing light, and I of course I get video, because you guys know me, like I video everything. And when I get the video and I kind of look at it and slow it down, I think he ran like a 6.8 something. But what I wasn't paying attention to is like the laser system they have in there is highly accurate, and it doesn't go on first move. It goes on when the foot breaks the plane of the laser. So he ends up running a 6.6 flat, which is great, especially for a catcher, right? As a pitcher catcher combo, running 6.6, it's great. So, and again, the other context is running a 6.660 which, again, to put in perspective, is 98.63rd percentile, 10-yard split of a 1.51, which is also 98.52 percentile, with a 3 a.m. Pacific Coast wake up. I'm pretty confident that he's got a 6.5 in him. I think he might even have a 6.4. But still, just phenomenally cool to see him go out and show off the athleticism that way on the first day. So that was the first part of kind of the skill assessment on that day. We got a chance to kind of like break for a little bit, but then we had 2 games. On Monday, we had two games with his team. So all the kids are assigned to a team. I think that the teams end up having players of a little bit of a different age spread. I don't think all the kids on his team were all 27s. And that went great. So they get 2. So basically the workout for the day is you have the catcher pop time, you have the 60 times, and then you have 2 games of baseball, which is like a decent it's a decent outline of stuff to pack in all one day. And I think it's fair to raise the question about like whether that whether that makes sense to kind of pack all that stuff into the first day. But by the same token, there's some other stuff that I need to be honest about, the fact that I think PG did a great job of managing when it comes to simple concepts like scheduling logistics stuff that affect arm care and your capacity to be able to be in a good place. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So first game, he catches like half the game, spends an inning, maybe 2 in right field, and had some time on the bench. And it was great. And very, very quickly apparent, it seems like, they got a good group of boys. And, the vibes are high. Danny Torres, the coach, who I got a chance to build a little bit of a relationship with, keeps these boys like in a really good place. So first 2 games go really great. Danny, again, like I said, I think caught like the kind of a little bit close to the half of that first game and a lot of that second game. So that's our Sunday. So now we've done all of our baseball stuff on Sunday, and we're done. And critically, what's happening on the Monday, so the next day, is we have 1 game, but that's the game that Danny's going to end up being pitching in. And we didn't really know what the rotation was going to look like at the onset, and I was trying to suggest to him, like, hey, if you can, because you caught and you did your throwdowns on Sunday, let's try to see if we can get the schedule, ideally push the fact that you can do your pitching on Monday. And again, it wasn't a high volume of throws, doing the catcher throwdowns, but, again, there's a little bit of that thing of stacking a little bit of a high intent on top of high intent. So this kind of gets back to, how did we end up here in the first place? Well, because we got the notification so early, and we knew when the event was, and we also knew that we were shutting down for throwing in August, we could build the off-season onboard schedule and also the ramp-up even post-onboard to be inclusive of the fact that, we wanted to be able to throw a bullet at 100% and be in a good, healthy place to do that at the end of December, only because of how we managed the schedule since August. And Danny had some opportunities to continue playing deeper into August, but we shut it down, and also some fall ball stuff, right? We had the opportunity to do the fall Pac Northwest games, and we kind of forewent. I didn't sleep enough last night, gang. We didn't take advantage of those opportunities because we're kind of orienting the offseason around this one specific thing. So I guess that's part of the point here is that if you're going to demonize Perfect Game or any other showcase provider for running events at the end of December that are going to require kids to go at 100%, the only thing I got to push back on is you, as the parent or the coach, still have the capacity to administer and set up a schedule that allows you to be in a place to do that if you so choose, relative to some of the other things that you don't choose to do earlier on in the summer or in the fall, right, in the conclusion of the summer. So August was our shutdown. We start on-ramping in September, in late September, I guess, early October. I have to look at the date of the mocap dates. So we have October, we're fully on-ramped. November, we're still building into a velo phase. And by the time that we got into December, Danny had been on the bump and had his post velo phase mocap, where he got up to 89.7, which is not 90, and you can imagine how he felt about that. And then we're starting to kind of like deploy the new tool, right? Like you went from, a PR top of 87-ish to now we're right on the cusp of 90. So we've gained, call it about 3-ish miles an hour. And now we're at an appropriate amount of time to start figuring out how that works, and still, again, staying on a throwing program at the end of December. It is a thing that you can do, but you have to be highly specific with how you line up, stack, and schedule the decisions that you're making from as far back as July and August, right? Like you have to take a little bit of like a macro perspective on how we get there. So we got our first game on Monday at 10 a.m. We've done the throwdown time. We've done pop times. We've done the sprint stuff. And we're good to now go play game 3. But critically, Danny's going to pitch. And I wasn't sure how much he was going to pitch. I didn't know if it was going to be a couple innings. I didn't know if he was going to start, etc. Which, for someone who's as control driven as Wah, a little bit of a challenge, but like, I don't know, maybe it was a good thing that I was just like sick as a dog, because I'm kind of just like, okay, it's going to be what it's going to be, right? I'm trying to roll with the whole thing. And man, it's an interesting environment, somebody else was on the team with my son, literally came to the event from Alaska. So everything you hear me kind of bitching about a 3 a.m. wake up from my kid, imagine how it was for them. That thing was crazy. And it's also like a real interesting environment generally, this type of level of PG showcase. I mean, we were at the airport with a kid waiting on our luggage, where the kid literally has like a Louis Vuitton bag. And it's fine. It's fine. I'm not pocket watching and hating on anybody, but it's an interesting thing that you get a chance to see in these environments is a fairly wide cast of characters from a variety of different socioeconomic backgrounds. So game on Monday, and I'm watching Danny do his long toss, and like when he's getting ready to pitch to start, he'll go pretty long in long toss in his pregame stuff. He'll basically go from line to line or as far as he can. Because of how long he's gone, I'm like, oh, like he must be starting, right? See him goes and throws a little bit. They were the away team, so they hit first, and while that's going on, I'm watching him. Getting ready in the little pen that they have on the side. And I got to say, so the other team, starts on the bump in the field, and the kid's pitching, and he's doing fine, right? But like I overhear this dad tell another dad in the stands, he's like, yeah, it looks, probably 92, 93. And then that same dad ends up going over, and because PG has a stalker that's like right behind the backstop, and you can kind of look over that shoulder and see, and then he comes back and tells one of the other dads, he's like, I guess it's just like mostly mid-eights. Excuse me. And I think that thing in and of itself is a little bit indicative of a thing I want to touch on later, which is just, I think you've got parents who they're just looking to get questions answered. And that's why they come to these type of events. So again, we'll touch on that later. So yeah, I've already got one dad who's like, oh, his eye soda is like 7 miles an hour hot. I got another parent in the stands who, her kid caught a, was it? No, this was the game before us. Kid catches a barrel, and one of the moms leans over to the parent of the kid and goes, "Oh, your baby did really good." And the mom goes, "He better." But that's the other thing, right? Is that when there's this weird thing where, like, as the cost accelerates, it has the entire endeavor has an opportunity to feel a lot more consequential because of the money involved, and like that's just the reality of it. And I think that same sentiment is why you often, maybe unfortunately, you can see some amount of like bad behavior on the field or in the stands from parents and coaches because of the amount of money that's involved. And all I can say about stuff like that is like, man, that's why I'm so thankful for like the past experience we've had, the Positive Coaching Alliance, to try to like help parents through that type of culture stuff. But currently, more specifically, what we're doing with Travis Snyder and 3A Athletics, because we're giving parents some tools and some inherent acknowledgement that when you start to frame the experience like that and your kid catches a whiff of it, man, you are just laying you are just laying tracks of mines in their path. And I'll tell you, man, I realize I'm probably jumping around a little bit because I want to savor the story of getting to Danny's pitching. We had two things that we talked about often leading into this event. And one of those things was, and I think I might have talked about this on the pod. He's been fighting and grinding for like 0.2 and 0.2 and 0.1 of a mile an hour for a while now. And when he had his last mocap in December, which was, a few weeks before we ended up going down to the PG event, the main event, and he popped a 89.7 or whatever. And he was upset. He was really upset because, well, you can guess why. Because 89.7 is not 90, right? And like we do all this joking internally at Driveline, like we don't round up. And what that means is like, you have a kid set a goal and they get almost infinitesimally close to that goal, but then they don't reach it. And then you have to deal with like the downstream ramifications of that. And it's been a blur over these last month or so maybe I talked about this before, maybe I didn't. So I will say succinctly, the one message that I gave to Danny coming out of that was just like, man, you can't win this race on this lap. And what I was trying to express is I'm pretty confident that the reason that he wants to hit that 9 is because he knows that like he needs to continue to improve his performance if he wants to open up the door for bigger and better collegiate and eventually, potentially, maybe, if he wants it, if he's willing to sacrifice for it, someday professional baseball. Like you have to understand that like these kids are aware that there is a gap between how the best dudes in the world perform and how they currently perform. And if you're trying to put yourself on that path, you are going to like scratch and claw and fight for every single 0.2 of a mile an hour because you're trying to build towards this thing. And then when you don't exactly get to like that actual tipping point of like my pitching velocity starts with a 9, it starts to feel frustrating. But the messaging that I gave him around that was just like, man, you can't win this race on this lap. Meaning, whether you hit a 9 or not as a junior off the bump doesn't necessarily mean you won't hit it eventually. It just means you're not going to hit it now. And even if you do hit it now, that doesn't really future-proof anything. Like that. I know guys who are 95, 96, 97 mile an hour arms who just finished a season of indie ball and are trying to find jobs. Like that's a real thing. So my message to Danny at this point was just like, man, I understand what you're frustrated about. And I'm not even going to tell you that like the thing, the genesis of that emotion, this like I want to continue to improve and I want to unlock better performance. I'm not going to say that's a bad idea to have, but what I will say is we have to find a way to balance our drive towards finding this number that, albeit is a little bit arbitrary. We need to balance that with some type of feeling of accomplishment of what we've earned in these small incremental gains. Like going from 89.5 to 89.7 or 89.6 to 89.7. It's a minor amount of improvement, but like you're not moving backwards. And I want him to know that, like, part of the value here is like that experience, man. It's like you walk out of the gym and you're gassed, and you gave it everything you had on the throwing side, and you gave it everything you had on the hitting side, and you gave it everything you had on the HP, or what we would call the strength and athletic development side. And there's still a lot of satisfaction to find in that part of it. So we had a lot of conversations about that. So leading into this, this idea of like, hey man, you can't win the race on this lap, was something that was like a fairly constant refrain. And then as we got closer to the PG event, again, this is his first showcase ever. Haven't done a local showcase, haven't done anything. This is the one. Talked a lot about the idea that, like, man, this is, you just control what you can control. And generally, the thing that you can't control is, like, are you going to compete your tail off or not? That's the thing that you can control. So, we came out of those two games on Sunday after the sprint time, after the catcher throwdowns. And, man, when he said to me, he said, I know that there's all these people that are watching, and I'm just having fun. Boy, I don't even know how to describe how full my heart was to have him come to that revelation. To go like, I know that it's important that I have to perform well here. And I know that I'm seeing perhaps maybe a little bit higher level of competition than I had before. And I know that people are watching. And I know that to a degree, my production matters. And with all that stuff happening, I'm just having fun. My heart was full of joy. It was full of joy that was a place that he brought himself to. I didn't have to say that. Yeah, man, I said you can't win the race on this lap. I said, hey, control what you can control. But when he says to me, I know people are watching. I know it. And all I'm trying to do is just have fun. That was pretty special. I know I'm jumping around. Anyways, it's Monday. I'm sitting in the bleachers for the opposing team because, again, I'm sick, and I'm trying to stay out of the shade so I just don't like spontaneously combust. So I sit down. We hit first, and then we go into the field. So Danny starts on the bump, and he's warming up, and there's a part of me that like really wanted to go back and just bird dog the stalker gun behind the box or behind the backstop. But I also, number one, don't want to put myself in his eye line, right? And number two, I don't want to send that signal to him because now, it's interesting, right? Like, yeah, we're recording pitching velocity, and that stuff matters, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But you're also doing it in a game container, right? It's not just a pen and abstract. There's batters in the box. There's outs to be recorded. And, and again, the other thing I will give Perfect Game a lot of credit for, there were some innings, not my son's, but there were some innings of games that I watched where they just rolled it. And like, yes, beautiful, do that. So I don't want to get in his mix. I don't even want him to be thinking about me being there when he's about ready to get in competition. So I'm in the bleachers for the other team on third base side in the shade. First couple of pitches come in, and like there's a little bit of a pop, and like I my ISO is decently accurate. I'm like, he's probably 86, 87, 88 maybe. And there's a dad who's sitting like right close to me, and he gets up and goes and watches the gun for a couple pitches, and he comes back. He's like, said something to the effect of like, oh, he's already up to like 87 or 88 or whatever. And he says that to me because we're sitting right next to each other. And I said, yeah, I know that's my son. so we ended up having a good talk about it, and and his boy is on the other team, and he's talking to me about he's a big athlete. He's good. His throwing mechanics are a little bit unique, and they're trying to figure out, what he needs to do to get him to throw a little bit harder. And he says to me, he's like, yeah, I think we're going to go see these Driveline guys and go, check them out. And I said, yeah, that's my department. I'm the director of baseball at Driveline. So that was amusing. Anyways, so first inning, soft liner to third, punchy. We're out. Second inning, punchy. And he's sending it at this point. And at some point, I overhear somebody saying that like, oh, they threw 90. So I'm like, internally, I'm already like, I'm jumping up and down because I know how bad he wanted it. And I'm also a little bit validated because when he got up to 89.6 or 7 or whatever in the lab, one of the things I told him definitively, it was like, look, that's the lab. You know what's going to happen. You're going to be on a field with cleats on, outside, the sun is going to be shining, there's going to be a hitter in the box, and you're going to find that other gear, because that's typically how it works, right? Most guys are going to throw harder in competition than they ever will in the lab here. So I knew that he had gotten a 90. I didn't know, I didn't know what it was. And then third inning, punchy with just like an absolutely demonic sequencing. And again, this kind of comes back to an idea that we talked about before. Excuse me while I take a water break. Can you guys hear that I still sound like I'm a little bit sick? We talked about this before, but like this generation of kids that have grown up with MLB The Show, I'm fairly convinced that like they are going to summarily discard a lot of what we came up with as rules around sequencing and how do pitchers attack in a way that like is going to make hitters' lives really, really hard. So I believe it was in that third inning. One of those sequences is I think he went top shelf four-seamer for a swing and miss, right? So perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. Backspin that thing, let it ride up. It's gonna look like a high strike, and oftentimes, unless you're set up in like high pitch posture as a hitter, it's really hard to get around and get on and stay flush through that top shelf heater. So that's strike one. And I believe the sequence from that point was turbo sinker backdoor take for strike two. For anybody that doesn't know, the turbo sinker, and this is why you should probably watch the show on either YouTube or Spotify, is going to come in, and then it just takes like a downward right turn, right? But again, when you're backdooring that pitch, it looks like it's running away, and then zap and swings it way into the lower left part of the strike zone on the outside side. So take for strike two, and then we've been working on a changeup for him. And he's played with a spike change, and now he's actually just full on conventional circle change, and he spots a backdoor changeup in the exact same location that the backdoor sinker went, and that's just nasty. Like that's just a nasty sequence. That like if he was in the box and he was hitting and like that's what it was, it'd be like, hey man, like sometimes you just got to tip your cap to the other guy. Like that's just not fair. So we got 8 punchies over 3 innings. Although I think one of those is one of those where I think he might have got to a 3-2 count, and again, it's a PG event, and we are recording velocity in competition. But you also understand that like you probably want to let one rip, and I think one of those might have been an AB where he let one rip. And that was where the 91 came from. Might have been a little bit out of the zone, maybe a little bit high, and then came back and actually struck that guy out. Because what happens if you get to 3-2 and you end up walking him, then it's just heater only until either the AB resolves itself or you end up rolling the inning in some circumstance. And he got a punchy on one of those, which I don't think they officially count. So anyways, but whatever. 3 innings, 8 strikeouts, 1 lineup, no hits, no walks. Again, the no walks thing is... Put that to the side. My bad. Let me just strike that out. But anyways, couldn't have gone better. Couldn't have gone better. And and while this is going on, I had signed myself up for notifications from all of the PG accounts that were posting content from the main event thing. And I will say, if you want to wrap your head around the scale of Perfect Game and what they do exactly that on a weekend when they're running these type of events. And the feed is just constant. Which again, we'll talk more about that later. But the notification comes in for PG. I mean, if you look, I said I was going to brag about my kids, so I'm not going to hold back now. So what the post said, which was pretty cool to see, is Danny Morgan, 27, Washington, overpowering hitters early on. Fastball working 86, 89, top 91. With life. Curveball 74, 76 with depth. Flashed a changeup at 76. So I see that and I'm like, oh, well, not only did we find a 9, we found like some loose change of another mile an hour on top of that. And again, like you don't know if it's 91.1, you don't know if it's 91.9, but whatever, we found the 91. So Danny, he's done for the day after 3, and he signals to me. He's like, right, 9, and a 1, because somebody told him. And it's man, it's hard. It's hard not to get choked up as his father, because that 9 was earned. He earned it. Didn't come easy. It didn't just show up. There was no 3 mile an hour unlock. That 9 is a reflection of not only what we've been doing since August, and not only what's happening in the gym, but also the focus on nutrition and the focus on rest and recovery. That 9 was earned. And, I got a picture on my phone because we finished the game. Goes well. We got like a little bit of a downtime. Then he has to go do his hitting EV testing. So he's got to take a round of BP and then go and swing a bat and have the bat speed recorded. So I take this picture where we're sitting down in the stands at JetBlue, and I send it over to my wife, and she goes, she says something like, "You're such a proud dad," and I guess it just must have been written on my face, but she was right. Because he earned it. So after, the big adrenaline dump of having your 3rd game of baseball in 2 days, plus your catcher throwdown pop times, plus your sprint time, now we have to do, now we got to do a little BP. BP round went fine. It's all wood bat. I think he topped it at 89, which was not as exemplary as the throwing stuff. EV of a top of 89 is 87.2 percentile. However, the fastball at 91 is 99.52 percentile. So, little bit of a gap there. But hitting went fine, and then they go and do their bat speed stuff, and that was our day. So then, we go clean up. Go clean up at the hotel, knocked around at some of the beautifully scenic malls in Fort Myers, Florida. And then went to a little bit of Texas Roadhouse and got him like it's like a 22, 23 ounce porterhouse to celebrate. Wrapped up our day on Tuesday with some coach pitch games. And again, this is one of these things where I think you have to give Perfect Game a little bit of credit. Now, would I suggest that maybe doing the coach pitch games on the first day so that you have a little bit more of a runway into 60 times and pitching and EV testing? Sure, but look, this is the first PG event I've gone to. They've run tens and thousands of them, so presumably they have a good idea for the way that they do it. But again, coach pitch, right? It's a coach pitch, and you have to swing at the first 2 pitches, which was great because The kids get a chance to play in the field a little bit more. They get a chance to still get some more swings, which somebody's getting video of, but you're doing that in a way where you're not, again, like leaning on the most taxed thing you're going to have in this environment, which is the arms. I thought that was a really, really smart way to run this thing. And, you know, and at the end of the day, man, you know, people crap on Perfect Game because they run a bunch of showcases. And but they do stuff like this where they are rolling innings or they are going to have some coach pitch games. They're doing that stuff because they're cognizant of what the problem is and they're trying not to contribute to it. Perfect Game runs an MLB Pitch Smart standard. Do you know that? There are other large organizations that do not. One of them that starts with an R and ends with an N, I believe, is like the Wild West right now. Another one that starts with a B, ends with an H. Never adopted MLB Pitch Smart as far as I'm aware. So again, man, I think you have to tell the truth about all of this stuff. Now, is it ideal for Perfect Game to run a showcase at the end of December? Well, it was ideal for us. But that's the reality of the thing. My son is a junior. He's going into his junior high school baseball season and his junior summer season. He wants to play college baseball. His metrics, I know, are good because I am bombarded with him constantly at Driveline, but we never did a showcase. I got to get him out there. I got to get him in front of coaches. Now, I suppose this begs the question, like, well, what if he threw a 91 in the gym? Right? What if you threw a 91 in the gym? Well, if you threw a 91 in the gym, man, I suppose I would like to think that, you know, that if you put that content out and he put that information out to college coaches, that maybe that opens up some of the same doors as this has. I don't know. I don't know. And again, I think you have to tell the truth that, like, throwing a 91 in a gym, in a lab, where there's no constraint, as opposed to throwing 91 and striking out 8 over 3 and overpowering, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a different thing. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that, like, there is some competition context that you get when that stuff happens in a game that I would not be surprised if college coaches want to see. And that they might infer that there's a little bit of a different signal. Yes, if you throw 91, 92 in a lab, hey, that's great. You know, and there are coaches who are going to be like, they're in on that just because of the output. That doesn't mean that if you go and do that in competition in an event like the PG Main Event Showcase that we were just at, that doesn't provide a little bit of similar but additional leverage because you're seeing it happen in competition. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter, man. So you know, we had our 2 games on coach pitch. Started relatively early, got done relatively early. Got to the airport in plenty of time. Regrettably, Fort Myers does not have a Delta Sky Lounge, but you know, we got a chance to get home, and then we're home for New Year's Day. And of course, you know, amusingly, all of this trip did was just like drag my sickness on for longer and longer, so that the front part of my ABCA trip, which I think we will just constrain for another episode because this is getting on long, that I kind of carried that sickness into ABCA and was literally terrified that for the speaking stuff that I had to do at ABCA, that I was not going to be healthy enough, or I would not have a voice to be able to do that. Fortunately, that didn't go that way, and ABCA went relatively great. Again, I'll talk about that on a separate episode. But yeah, man. So I guess the biggest takeaway, you know, for me, of having my son finally go and do an actual showcase and do the PG Main Event Showcase specifically, is while there were some kids that we saw, both, you know, the teams that were on my son's team, on other teams that we played, or just kids that you saw around the complex there, because there's a lot of baseball going on. Some of those kids were, you know, definitively like upper level prospects. And and should be in a very good place to play college baseball. I would like to think that my son is one of them. There are also kids there who aren't at that place. And I think that kind of gets to the root of, the service that Perfect Game provides. That dad that I was sitting next to who's like, oh, it's 92, 93. And then he comes back and he tells his buddies like, it's actually like 84, 85. I think that betrays the fact that a lot of these parents are just looking for answers. So, and critically, I think they're looking for answers about something that is oftentimes very obtuse, which is my kid good? Like, it's a real simple question. Like, is my kid good? Is my kid good enough to go play at a higher level? And I think you have to give Perfect Game a lot of credit because, look, man, I got this thing saved on my phone now that gives my son's performance and percentile rankings across the entire class of 2027. This is effectively what I paid for. I suppose I paid for him to go out and compete, and I paid for, ideally, him to do so in a way in an event where, now that the dead period is over, is that, he'll get some contact from coaches, and we'll see, what exactly college baseball is going to look like. But at the root of it, that screenshot is kind of what I'm paying for. Now, look, you can make the argument about, the PG grading, like the overall grade, or whether you're a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10. And it's interesting, it's very interesting, the idea that, like, once you get into that ecosystem, you get a decent amount of signal that, like, yeah, you should come back and do another one of these things. And I'll be honest, man, like, I understand how compelling that is now. I do. And I can sit here and summarily say that, like, look, I think the thing that is going to allow my son to go out and make a college baseball roster is not whether he's ranked as a PG 8 or a 9. That's not it. But I also understand, I really understand the desire with which parents are trying to find answers to these type of questions where, the answer is just, like, broadly not that simple. And again, like, look, man, my kid has a lot of, like, oh my gosh, my kid has a lot of 98th and 95th and 90th and 99th percentile stuff on his page. None of that guarantees in any way, shape, or form that he's going to make a college roster. However, it's not that it doesn't provide a little bit of insight there. And I think even for his side, right? Like, look, you might understand that, Striker Pence is out there and that kid throws hundos. Okay. You can look at that type of outlier performance and go, all right, well, that kid's going to get, might be a first-round draft pick, and I don't measure up. But to get a sense of, like, exactly how much of an outlier that is, consider that, again, 91 mile an hour thrown ball velocity for a 2027 graduate puts you in the 99.52 percentile. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, and, I think back about, things that I have probably said and opinions that I have probably offered about Perfect Game or other type of showcase companies in the past, that at this point, I don't really have, I don't honestly have anything to kind of say about that. Is that, like, I think it was perhaps a touch ill-informed. Perfect Game is putting on a service that is in demand by customers because it provides them answers to questions that I don't think they otherwise have access to. Is that a bad thing? Yeah, they ran a showcase in December. Okay, well, it was our responsibility to get him in a place where he was ready to go out and be able to perform at that period of time at this level. And I'll tell you what that looks like over the course of the next 2 months, right? We're throwing a pen once a week. He's going to start having captain's practices. Plus, we're doing what we're doing on Driveline. And what we are going to do is try to build up that throwing workload to the point that when he gets into the high school season, he's in a good place. And specifically as a kid who is probably going to pitch and catch for his high school team, we have to build that up. But we want to do it in the same way that we've talked about in the show, infinite number of times where you build it up progressively. So throwing barely 30 pitches over 3 innings in Florida was something that worked. And again, I saw kids who had innings rolled because the pitch count got up there. That was the thing that I saw firsthand. I saw them running coach pitch games on the last day of the event so that kids can get more reps in the field and more reps in the batter's box, but not do so in a way where it's costing the arms. So I guess I just want to put that information out there, not because I'm trying to suck up to PG. I mean, my relationship with Taylor and the boys over at PG is fine regardless, but I do think you have to tell the truth about the fact that I don't know that Perfect Game is the demon that they have been made out to be all too often. I think they probably get a large target on their backs because of how prevalent they are and the volume of events that they run. And that's a separate conversation. But in this one particular, man, I got to tell the truth about our experience, which was largely very, very positive. Danny Torres was his head coach, who does stuff for Showcase. Great experience there. Put together a really good group of kids. Team culture was good. The kids had a ton of fun, worked really hard. And I don't know, man, I think it worked out well for us. So that's just my disclaimer. And, and again, I guess the other thing I'll say to kind of wrap up this story, and I promise, the full breakdown of the ABCA convention and everything that entailed, I will save that for next episode. For this one, we just put out Danny's athlete story. It literally just published yesterday at 5 o'clock. So you can find that on the Driveline Baseball YouTube page in full. It's like a 10, 11-minute video. They've got the cut down on socials right now. I'd highly suggest that you watch it. Because it's earned. And again, I suppose to a degree, my circumstance is no different than it was when he was 8 years old and we first came down to Driveline for the first time. I know that my kid was really serious about baseball. I knew that he wanted to get better, and I knew that Driveline, or I believed that Driveline had some insight and some expertise about answering those type of that how good is my kid question, or what do they need to do that nobody else had access to. And I think that still holds true in 2026. He's in a great place right now, right? He just recently hit a ball 99 miles an hour, not yet 100, which is, again, his next goal that he's fixated on. Threw a ball 91, ran a 6.60, and is a pitcher, catcher, shortstop utility combo. I would like to think that all of those things are putting him in a position where he's going to have good leverage to go out and play and take a college baseball roster spot somewhere. I believe that in my heart. But that isn't a destination, number one, that I'm going to count the proverbial chickens before they hatch. And, certainly we got to solve that. But also, the experience is one that I would like to think that he has gained a lot from, regardless of the eventual destination. And that's a point that I made in Danny's athlete journey video that I'll just regurgitate here, right? That what I really think that this system taught was this approach for seeing himself as a vessel for self-improvement. And that was the goal, right? The baseball skill stuff was secondary to that. The stuff about playing the game was tertiary to that. The thing that matters is that we kind of imparted this idea of how good do you want to be, and what steps are you willing to take, and how strongly you're willing to commit in order to get to the place you say that you want to go. Because not every kid answers that question the same way. And that's okay, right? Like, that's okay. I think eventually, all you want is for anybody to just find their passion and follow that. And certainly all the kids who start in baseball are not going to end up being as passionate about baseball to the degree that they're going to try to seek out like collegiate professional opportunities. That's a different thing, and it requires a different level of commitment. But I guess one of those things that like I am proud about what we do is that I think our deal is that we're trying to take these concepts about self-improvement and development and process and inputs over outputs and effort over outcome and frame them in a way that is baseball specific for this period of time, but it has other applications if you adhere to the process in a different format later on in life. And that's a thing that, like, quite frankly, I'm very proud about what we do. And I will always be proud about what we do. Because of that, because of what it's done for my own son. And that's the truth. And what it did for my own daughter in the period of time that she was here, right? Like she's in college now. And tonight is her first rugby practice. And once I finish recording this show, I'm going to send her a message that basically regrounds all the other stuff that we talked about when she was here at Driveline. Hey, man, we're effort over outcome. You're learning a thing. You're taking a new step into a new endeavor that you've never done before. And that's going to be scary. And you're going to be unsure of yourself. But like, if you just try to receive this process of learning as best you can, and you have fun and you find some moments of joy as you go through that thing, well, maybe this is just going to be a new thing that you can be passionate about and a new thing that you can deploy that same set of tools that we learned in the gym here at Driveline in a different endeavor. At least that's what I hope. So that's all I got. Feel like I went decently in depth. Hopefully this story is compelling to you. And if not, we'll talk about ABCA next time. I can't promise that I will wear as cool of a shirt as the Starcade 85 Dusty Rhodes Ric Flair that my wife was good enough to get me for the holidays. But that's because I have the best wife in the world. That's all I got. So next time we're going to talk about ABCA recap, a whole bunch of stuff going, some updates to this process of universal pitch count, universal reporting. We got really good leverage going on, good relationships. You might find your boy on the MLB Network sometime soon talking about some of these concepts. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know when it's going to come out, but that's coming out. We got the content that we filmed at the HitTrax booth with my good friends at AxeBat will come out. Again, AxeBat.com, code DL20, Dallas Larry 20 will get you 20% off. And 1 day and 3 day assessments at Driveline Baseball. I can't believe I didn't talk about this, but yeah, we'll talk about this later. I'm going to do a coupon code exclusive for you guys, just for podcast listeners. If you want to come in and do some assessments at Driveline, we're going to give you a discount. Because why not? We're family, right? We're family. Okay, cool. That's all I got. My name is Deven. I'm down by law. I will catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.